Good afternoon, everyone. It's Kirk Harnack, and you have tuned in to the SBE's Webxtra. It's our third meeting on the web, and this is an experimental program. It's a pilot program that we're doing just prior, for 3 months prior, to the SBE Board of Directors meeting in Las Vegas with the SBE show. Of course, I left that going, so let's see if we can stop that. Too much going on. So this is our third show. And on our third show, we're going to talk about the SBE Mentoring Program. And we've got a mentor and a mentee who are going to join us and talk about that and tell us what's value about it from a number of perspectives. So hang on. I want to bring in the communications director for the Society of Broadcast Engineers, Chris Shearer. Chris, welcome in. Glad you could join us today. How's it going?
Hi, Kirk. How are you? Good to be here again.
I'm good. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the history of the mentoring program and kind of bring it up to the point where we are now, and then we'll go to our mentor and mentee.
Sure. Well, the SBE Mentor Program started a couple of years ago. It's actually an idea that's been out there sort of floating around in various incarnations for several years. But like any good idea to get fleshed out, and a lot of steps to be taken, a lot of pieces to be put together. And then finally, the right combination, the right recipe came along, and it was able to get launched in 2016 was the first batch of mentors and mentees. It is currently administered by Kathy Oros in the national office. She's our education director for the SBE. And I administered it at the very beginning for a short time. And but Kathy's done a lot of groundwork as far as working with the mentor program, mentor committee chairs to see the program come to the state it's in today. And it's quite successful. Chris Tarr is currently the chair of the mentoring committee, and he'll be with us here in a little bit, and he'll have lots more information to share as well.
Very good. I didn't realize the program was that new, and I guess I hadn't heard these words, mentor and mentee, until just the last couple of years. So now it makes sense. I want to, again, welcome everyone for tuning in. This is a pilot program with the Society of Broadcast Engineers. The idea is to get a meeting out there where members who maybe can't get to a local meeting can enjoy a meeting on the web. Not only are they live, but they're also recorded and available on YouTube forevermore. Also, we hope to have on this program, on this SBE Webxtra, we hope to bring in guests who normally couldn't get to a number of SBE chapter meetings. So maybe we have folks who, with a lot of knowledge, who are maybe up in years, older, or their job doesn't allow them to travel. But we want to bring them to you and bring their knowledge to SBE members anyway. So it's kind of like a little mini webinar or seminar, and we get to share the knowledge of some members who have quite a lot of it. Now, by the way, this new mentoring program, I received an application for it myself. I asked for one. Kathy Oros sent me one, and I just got my reply 4 hours ago from Kathy. Welcome to the 2019 SBE Mentor Program, the email says. We're excited to serve you and your career through this program. The program is designed to help broadcast engineers who are new to the field. We have partnered a new engineer, the mentee, with a more seasoned professional, the mentor. The goal is for the more experienced person to share his or her gained knowledge, both empirical and practical, with someone new to the field. So that's the welcome letter that you get with a few details. There's also the SBE Mentor Program quarterly webinar on May 8th at noon. That'll be coming up. So anyway, good information, and I like the way this program is going together. And I also like that my personal friend, Chris Tarr, is one of the mentors of the program, and Chris even has begun with a couple of mentees. So let's bring in Chris Tarr. Welcome in, Chris.
Well, thank you, Kirk. Thanks for having me.
A lot of folks may know that Chris Tarr, for quite a few years, was a co-host on the podcast This Week in Radio Tech. And Chris, I've seen his responsibilities and his knowledge grow and grow and grow. I met Chris of all times on September 11th. Of 2001. And Chris made time for me, even though he was very busy. And we've had a good relationship ever since. And I really appreciate Chris's friendship and his professionalism. And now, Chris, what's your position now, Chris, in Milwaukee?
Well, apparently somewhere we're going to be able to write checks to Kirk Harnack. Very kind introduction. I am the Director of Technical Operations for intercom stations in Milwaukee and Madison. So I have 2 FMs and an AM here in Milwaukee, and then I've got 3 FM stations in Madison. And then I, help out a lot with, projects around the company with, wide orbit and some other things. So they keep me busy.
One thing, we're going to meet one of your mentees in just a minute. He's hanging on in the wings, and in fact, if you're watching this, you probably can see that there are little thumbnail views down in the corner of the screen, and that represents all the participants. Chris, this mentoring program, it seems a bit like in the ham radio world, we have people who we call Elmers. What correlations do you see between these two things?
Oh, lots. And really, this is kind of a response to that, because there really haven't been Elmers in this business. And, I always joke, kind of half joking, that I have a Rolodex of people who are smarter than me. And, through the years, whenever I've gotten stuck on something, I've been very fortunate that I've had people that I can turn to answer questions. But that isn't always the case. As time goes on, we've got new people coming into the field, but there isn't a lot of training and a lot of schooling for that. So where do you go when you have a question or you run into the problem that you don't know the solution to? And really, was kind of what this response was for, was to kind of pair up people who may be new in the industry or less seasoned, to be able to have a resource, if they run into a problem that they can't solve, or maybe just act as a sounding board to bounce something off. That's really kind of how this started. And that's what Elmers are at ham radio. Somebody who kind of takes a new amateur ham radio operator under their wing, give them a little training, show them how things work. That's the same way here with the mentor program. Really what we want to do is we want to bring in new people into the field and just make sure that they're not thrown to the fire. Sometimes it can be embarrassing to ask questions, or you don't want to admit that you don't know something. We want to pair people up with people that they feel comfortable with to ask those questions.
You said you had a Rolodex full of people smarter than you, and you call them when you need to know something. I noticed that, Chris.
Yes.
You've never called me.
Well, what does that tell you, Kirk?
But I've called you a few times for help. So
no, that's not true. But it's funny because over time I've become one of those people that people call. So, kind of come full circle. There's an engineer that I have a lot of respect for, who's been in this business for a long, long time. And he called me a while back on a question on HD radio. And I was just, wow, what do you want to talk to me for? He's like, well, you know more about this than I do. So it really is a matter of, getting these people together and sharing information, because there really is no place to get that anymore.
There are a number of resources for information, but we'll talk about how mentoring is fundamentally different than these. There was a discussion going on in the last day or two in a Facebook group. A young person had asked, "Hey, I want to get into broadcast engineering. Do you recommend I read this book?" And he had a picture of the NAB Engineering Handbook, I believe the 6th edition. And I've got that same copy at my office. Not sure how I got it. It's about 4 inches thick. And
Right.
it covers a lot of ground. It does have, practical information, but man, you've got to do a lot of reading perhaps to find exactly what you're looking for. There's also the SBE Engineering Handbook, and honestly, I think it's just terrific. I like the way it reads, but it's about 2.5 inches thick, and it's got just chock full of information. But it doesn't have the hands-on information. Well, then we also have something that the SBE is very good at as well, and that is webinars. If you're an SBE Member Plus member, then you have access to the entire library of webinars at no extra charge, and any new webinars that come out as long as you're a Member Plus member. So that's a really good resource. But again, it's a one-way communication. It's not reach back and ask questions or show me exactly how to do this, or what does this feel like when I'm doing it right, kind of thing, right? So
Sure.
there's nothing quite like having somebody walk you through something or explain it in real time. Speak about that aspect for a minute. How mentoring one-on-one or maybe one-on-two is fundamentally different than all these other methods of learning.
Absolutely. Well, you have a book and, a thick handbook like the engineering handbook. Sure, you can kind of find answers to questions if you know what the question is. Sometimes you don't even know what the question is. And, that just comes with experience, knowing even what questions to ask. So there's that element of it. A book can tell you technically what's wrong, but the book can't say, oh yeah, I've been there. Here are some of the things you want to watch for. The other thing we run into too is sometimes the mentees have questions just about business and the business of radio, the business of broadcasting. A book isn't really going to help you do that either. One of the things that comes up occasionally is with my mentees, and I have two of them, like Dave will call and say, hey, have you run into this before? And, yes or no. And, kind of go into detail. And I can get very specific. A book isn't going to get very specific about your exact transmitter or your exact problem. It's going to be theoretical. It's not going to be actual. So, as mentors, we can provide that kind of hands-on, been there, done that information that they can act on. And then they can also follow up, okay, I tried that. Here's what happened. What do you think? So I think that, in itself is just way different than being able to read a book.
So there's a number of different topics I want to jump to, but let's go ahead and introduce one of your mentees, and that's Dave Hartman. Dave, welcome in. Glad you could join us today.
Hello. Thanks for having me part of your webcast.
Now, Dave, you weren't, when you met Chris, and Chris is your mentor, you weren't entirely new to this field, were you? You already had your feet a little wet.
A little bit, just a few years in, but enough to be in trouble, I guess. And I knew right away. Actually, you guys had, some of the thoughts I had, you guys are already touched on them. But one of the big things for me as a mentee was wanting to connect with other broadcast engineers out there, being out rural, not in a big city. It's not as easy to find these broadcast engineers around that you can connect with. So I think the program for me has been great. It hit all the right points. And for me, like I say, to be able to connect with Chris on little things to the big business questions, anything, he's always there for me. So
Dave and Chris both, one of the things that, as I have done various things in broadcast engineering, I've often thought I should be showing somebody else how to do this because I know I'm not going to be doing this, whatever task it was, whatever problem solving it was. I'm not going to be doing this forever. I need to, have somebody else along to show them how to do this, or at least give them an idea. One of those things might be, for example, troubleshooting an AM directional array controller. A lot of times these are customized things. They have similarities, but then they have differences that are very, very customized. And my point is this: I have never had really a mentee myself. When I was in business for myself with Harnack Engineering, I had some employees, and of course, one of them pretty much taught me a lot. A couple others, I would teach them things. What I'm wondering is, as an engineer, as someone who wants to be a mentor, who wants to pass their knowledge along, you want to pass it along to somebody who's going to use that knowledge. You don't want to, waste your time explaining this to somebody who's not interested, and you also don't want to keep it all to yourself. So my question comes down to what in your case, Chris and Dave, how did you two get introduced and matched up so appropriately?
Well, that's really Kathy at National Headquarters is the one who paired us up. And Dave's kind of in my backyard in Minnesota. So I really think that's really what she was doing, was trying to pair up somebody. He had radio experience. He was looking for some help in radio. He was in the same kind of geographical area. So we're going on our second year now, I think Dave and I are. It just worked out very well because, kind of the things that Dave's doing are a lot of things that I've already done. So, the pairing worked out really well. So we continued it again another year, and, I'm sure it'll be continued forever. Dave's very good about contacting me when he runs into issues and things. So to be part of the program, SBE.org/mentor has all the details. And what Kathy will do is kind of try to find people who might be a good match in terms of, what are your weaknesses or what are you looking to learn? And then, who do we have kind of in the stable that will be a good fit?
SBE.org/mentor. That's an easy to remember site. And we'll try to put that in the notes on the YouTube page that has this video on it. Dave, you got hooked up with, frankly, one of the best engineers around, and you're so lucky that you didn't get me. How's it worked out for you?
It's been incredible. Something that too, I think when I filled out the form to become a mentee, I tried to adds in the description of what I was looking for. I try to be somewhat specific on, these are the things that areas I really like to grow in. And I'm not sure if, Kathy utilized that or not, but it sure seemed like she did when she paired me up with Chris. Cause I mean, it's been a great match, and I've learned a ton. So,
So, Chris, you've said that Dave was right in your backyard, and yet you're in different states. And Chris, you're even in the southeast part of Wisconsin. I had this impression that a mentor mentee would be people in the same city, in the same market, who could physically get together. But you haven't. You said that hasn't been a hindrance in you teaching and Dave learning.
Oh, not at all. I mean, and obviously, Dave knows, and we've talked about, having him come down to visit. I have another mentee out in North Dakota, and, he's going to come out and shadow me for a couple of days. But, it's not necessarily about hands-on in as much as just kind of offering advice. And, that can be done. I kind of have an open policy with Dave and my other mentees that, whatever you need, phone call, text, send me an email. I'm always available. And, so it really, kind of how Dave utilizes it is I'll get a text message from him going, hey, got a minute for a call? And, we'll set up a time. And if, there hasn't been anything going on for a while, we'll just kind of set up a time to just kind of chat. But, basically I say, hey, whenever you have any questions or you run into anything that you need some help with, that's the time to give me a call. There are no stupid questions. Contact me anytime if there's something going on. So, unfortunately, as much as we'd like to have people local, there's people are so spread out, and, we're still building up our stable of mentors that, it's just not feasible to do that. So we try to get at least the same geographical area. For Dave to come and visit or for me to visit him, it's a couple hour drive, but at least we kind of know, like I have contacts in the Twin Cities, and, so there is some common things there. But really, I haven't found in the over a year and a half that Dave and I have been doing this, I haven't found the distance to be an issue at all.
Interesting. Dave, how about your perspective on that, the distance?
Yeah, no, it's been great. And, this day in technology, right? We can always start a FaceTime video, even if we need to, like, you need to look at this.
Yeah.
No, really, you need to look at it. No, but, whether it's a Google Meet or, any of those video conferencing. So the distance isn't such an issue at all. So
I got to point out, you mentioned, Dave, FaceTime. And as you guys know, I am part owner, and technically I'm the director of engineering for a group of stations in Mississippi, and also for some stations in American Samoa and a station in Hawaii. And we have a lot of non-technical people at these stations, and I have a full-time job. I work for the Telos Alliance, and so FaceTime has been a lifesaver, because as engineers, if I ask Chris, or if I ask Dave, if I ask Chris Shearer, who's hanging in the wings here, if I asked you, hey, go look at this satellite receiver and tell me what looks wrong with it, well, the morning jock has no idea. He may be really good on the air, but he has no idea what's amiss with the satellite receiver. Yet any one of us, any of the four of us, could look at that and probably in 2 seconds identify, oh, well, there's the problem. The EBNO is 0, for example, things like that. FaceTime is an absolute lifesaver for engineers like us, who are dealing not only with, lay people we got to get a problem solved quickly, but also a lifesaver when you're doing a mentor-mentee thing. And even two experienced engineers, it's a lot easier to show somebody something, what it looks like, how it's operating, or maybe what it sounds like, right? Than to try to describe it over the phone without the use of pictures. I love FaceTime for this. I've had people do it, use FaceTime with me on towers, in transmitter sites, behind a satellite dish, under an automation, at a network switch. Chris, would you speak a little bit more toward the value of FaceTime and remote troubleshooting?
Oh, absolutely. I do it all the time. Not only with, potential mentees or whatever, but just friends, coworkers, and, other engineers who may be remote. As you know, there are fewer and fewer engineers around. Excuse me. So that isn't getting any better. So oftentimes we have to work smarter. And so, we'll get some of these smaller market stations that maybe don't have an engineer, or maybe have somebody part-time, or, whatever. And a lot of times I can get their IT guy on the phone or whatever, have them fire up FaceTime, show me the front of the transmitter, and I can find whatever the simple solution might be if it's a simple solution. Oftentimes, as you know, with transmitters, 90% of the time it's something very simple. Something needs to be reset, rebooted, recycled, whatever. But getting that information and getting that information accurately is so important. So that's where FaceTime really comes into play.
Very cool. Very cool. Hey, I want to ask Chris Shearer if he would rejoin us for a minute. And Chris, if you would talk a bit more about how I understand at the moment we have more mentors available than we have mentees. Did I hear that right, Chris?
Actually, I don't know the current statistics on that. I believe that is the case, that there are some mentors in the program who do not yet have a mentee with whom to work. So by all means, it doesn't mean though, if you're interested in being a mentor, that you should just say, no need for me to do it. No, that's not true at all. The program will continue to grow and more people are signing up to be mentees. So by all means, whether you're a mentor candidate or a mentee candidate, please let us know and contact the SBE, contact Kathy Oros and let her know and fill out the application and we'll hook you up with somebody.
Actually, it's a very, if we do have more mentors than mentees, that's a very good thing because we want to, Kathy wants to get the application of the mentee, find out where they stand, not only geographically where they are, but find out what kind of things they need to know. Are they absolutely fresh and green, or are they an engineer that's been around AM directionals and has never done audio processing or never done it for FM, or needs some questions answered about metadata or streaming? And then, they could get hooked up. Actually, if there's a metadata question, Chris Tarr is your guy. But there are some engineers, who I hate for people to not give out or not be available to give out information that they have gained over a lifetime or over decades of AM directional and that kind of thing. Yeah, Chris.
Well, not only that, but what we're working on with the mentor program is coming up with some specialized kind of mentor. We like to call them mentors at large. Where if we can't find a pairing for them, we still want them to be part of the program and we still want their talent and their expertise. And perhaps, let's say there's somebody special, who really specializes in AM directional antennas. Well, we were going to put together a directory for the mentors and the mentees. There's somebody that you can talk to for that specific piece of information. So, let's say, okay, this guy maybe doesn't have a mentee, but he has his information that, is very specific that we'd like to share. Maybe it's metadata, maybe it's, this or that, or, how to use vSoft or, something like that, where it's a very specialized thing. Maybe that person isn't comfortable with mentoring someone, kind of a well-rounded program, but hey, I really know this. And if anybody has questions about this, I would be the person to call. Well, that's great. Let's, get them in the program and use them as a resource for that.
So Chris Tarr, I've got a real basic question for you. When you get introduced to a mentee, and so far you've got Dave, and I believe you got a gentleman named Noah. When you get introduced to them, what's that first conversation like, to where you can establish some common ground and figure out, okay, do I need to talk about electrons, or do I completing a circuit, or can we just jump right on into RF? How does that conversation go, and how can you advise another mentor to be able to lead that conversation and ask the right questions?
Well, that's a good question. With Dave and Noah both, we really had a long kind of introductory email and conversation. Kind of, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your job description? What are the things you want to know about? And then after that, it was just a matter of, like I said, with Dave is fantastic about, hey, I'm working on this. What are your thoughts? Hey, I was thinking about this as an idea. What do you think about that? So, it's been very good in terms of, as we go along, learning more and more about each other and kind of, how we can help each other out. So I really, communication is the key. And I think setting up what you're comfortable with from the outset is really important, because, not everybody's as comfortable as I am with, hey, if it's 2 a.m. and you want to send a text message about something, go ahead, I'm around all the time. And some may want to be a little more structured. I'm not structured at all. As Dave knows, it's like, yeah, whatever you need, let me know, and we'll get together. So, but I think a lot of that is just setting those expectations. What do you want out of this? How can I help you? And here are my strengths. Here are the things that I really know I can help you with.
So here's a question for Dave. Dave, you've been mentoring, or you've been the mentee with Chris for a while now. How do you know when you're done?
That's a good question. Are we ever done learning? So, I've thinking about that in the past. What is the end game? Hopefully it's getting to a point where I feel pretty confident, but it's time to pass on the mentee role to someone else. Chris and I will probably always be in touch. That's one fun aspect of this. I feel like I've gained a friend, and a lifelong friend where, I got an issue, like Chris talks about, he's got the Rolodex. Guess what? Chris is in my Rolodex. So like if he likes it or not, but no, it's been great. I think, like I say, going out the end game, I'm not sure. We've set an end game, like after this year, I'm going to try and mentor somebody else. What's probably something we should talk about.
Chris Shearer at SBE reminds us that technically the program lasts 1 year. So the formal relationship lasts 1 year. You could renew that. And of course, there's nothing to keep a mentor and a mentee from keeping in touch. And just as Chris Tarr has people in his Rolodex, Dave Hartman, I'm sure that you have Chris Tarr in your Rolodex, and you feel welcome to call him. And I guess that's the way relationships work. I think of it a bit like when years ago, when I was training to get my pilot's license, I had a very intense relationship with my instructor. And after I got my license, then I still called the instructor from time to time to ask him questions of the things that came up. So I would imagine mentor mentee works about the same way. Chris, when do you think you're done with Dave?
That's a good question. Probably, I think Dave's right. I don't think, probably never. And I totally agree with Dave. I mean, we have a great relationship. I consider him a friend, and I don't think I'm sure there'll be, it won't be long before the student becomes a teacher, and I'll be asking him some questions about some things. But, it really is open-ended. And that's what's great about the program is, Dave may kind of grow out of that program, and that's fine. That's great. But that doesn't mean, he and I can't ever speak again. The goal is really, I think the program is really open-ended that way. Dave can be part of the program as long as he needs. I mean, I still have mentors, so I've been doing this for, almost 20 years. So, really, I don't see that as being, a plan. We don't really come up with a plan. Well, here's how we're going to get you out of this. I think the plan is simply, hey, I'm here when you need me. And, if for some reason, we change how the program is structured and he graduates out of it or whatever, he'll still have my information, and we'll still talk about things. So, I really think that it's less, at this point, it's not that formal and where, you join, you're expected to do this, and then you're out and you're on your own. It may just be where he's in the program and he doesn't need me as much as he used to, and gives me the opportunity to spend some more time with newer people, or maybe Dave gets to the point where he's able to mentor somebody. And, there's really no reason you can't be a mentor and a mentee. If you have special skills that you'd like to share, that certainly is not going to stop you from becoming a mentor to somebody else. I don't really look at the mentee and the mentor relationship as here's a newbie and here's an old guy. I look at it as two professionals helping each other out. And, I think that's the one thing that I want to get through to people who are maybe thinking about the program is, saying you're a mentee is not necessarily saying, I don't know anything about this and I need help. A mentee could be somebody as simple as, like Dave, where he's a professional out in the middle of nowhere, and there's really not a lot of resources for him. So he really just needs somebody to connect with, and somebody to kind of act as a sounding board or help. It could be something as simple as that, or something as as typical, I guess, as somebody who's new to the industry and needs some help.
I can totally see myself in 5 years, I'll be 62 years old, and I can totally see myself calling up somebody in my Rolodex. Hey, I need some help with this Kubernetes Docker thing in Google Cloud to make my station work. That's that's going to be a thing.
Right.
Hey, our show are talking about the mentor program from SBE wouldn't be complete without mentioning some of its previous chairs. Jeff Keith helped to get this thing going, along with Eric Schechter, and Kim Sachs added quite a bit to it as well during her tenure. I wonder if Chris Shearer could come back and we can kind of wrap this thing up here pretty soon, but talk about where we're, if we know where we're going with the mentor program, we're going to see, whoever's the chair, and it's Chris Tarr. Now, Chris, I should have mentioned, Chris Tarr is the current program committee chairman for the mentor program. Chris Shearer, where do you see things going from here?
Well, I'm not really the staff contact for this. Kathy Oros is, and so I can't really speak on her behalf, and I certainly don't want to speak on the behalf of the mentoring committee chairman. In this case, it's, as we've said, Chris Tarr. As someone who was somewhat involved in the very beginnings and then worked with it for a little while, obviously, we just want to see it continue to grow. It's yet another fantastic way for SBE members to continue their professional networking formally within the program. And then, of course, naturally, once the relationship has been established, it can continue for years and years after that, and be more than the original mentor-mentee. It can be a lifelong friendship. I think back even before, when I was first getting into broadcasting, there are a lot of people I consider my own mentors, and I didn't have a formal structure about it. Kind of wish we did at that time. I think I would have definitely taken advantage of it. So going forward, I mean, it's a wide open field, frankly, but we certainly want to see it to continue to grow and develop, and we'd love to have more and more people participate, both mentors and mentees.
Chris Tarr, as the current committee chair, where do you see this going?
Chris's observations are good. I always try to remind people that, one of the reasons that after Kim left, Kim did a fantastic job of, really kicking this program into place. And then she unfortunately had to leave the board for personal reasons. But one of the reasons that I was asked if I'd be willing to be appointed to the board of directors and to chair this was because of my passion for teaching and trying to grow new members in the business. I wrote what I joke about as a manifesto a couple of years ago, got myself into trouble, yelling, "Hey, we need to do something about this. Something's, we're running out of time and we really need to do something here." So I'm very passionate about it. I'm looking forward to, spending more time. We've been really working behind the scenes, monthly with the committee, trying to refine the program, expand it for our mentees. We have quarterly webinars to go over subjects that they're interested in. We have one coming up about converting to HD radio. We had one of the mentees raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'd like to know more about kind of the basics of how that works." Great. I'm sure that's actually kind of a common one. So we're going to do that. I recently hosted a webinar on kind of manners in business. So, we're looking for ways to kind of, be a resource, teaching resource, similar to the way that SBE has become really the certification resource. So, that if somebody's SBE certified, that they know, they've been through some education and they have some skills in order to get that certification. We're kind of looking at that as being that way for education as well. If you're an engineer that wants to learn about our industry, that the SBE is really the place to go for that. So, the program is still in its infancy. I'm sure there's going to be changes that, I'm not even envisioning now, but we do have some exciting things along the way. And I encourage everyone, if you want to either, be a teacher or be a student or maybe even both, to get involved. Again, I mean, I can't emphasize enough just the relationship portion, like that Dave and I have. I made a great friend out of this program, and Dave and I will, I'm sure, be in touch forever. And we probably wouldn't have had that opportunity without having gone through the program. So I think there's a lot of positives in addition to just the educational value of it.
I can see some value in outreach for more mentees, perhaps through social media. And Chris, I'm happy, as the chairman of the social media committee, I'm happy to work with you to promote the mentor program to potential mentees. So why don't we talk about that at our SBE board meeting?
Sure. Great.
Happy to help. Hey, I think we about wrapped it up here. We've been doing our SBE WEBxtra meeting here. If you've tuned in, you've been hearing about the SBE Mentor Program. Chris Tarr is the committee chairman of that, and he's also a mentor to 2 mentees. Dave Hartman has been with us from Minnesota. Dave, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to say one kind of wrap up. If anybody's considering being a mentee out there, whether you're right out of school and you don't know anything, or you're somewhat seasoned, it's a great program to get in either way. I mean, I've learned just a ton, just with the few years of broadcast engineering that I had. It's taken me to a whole new level. So I just encourage everybody to go for it.
Chris Tarr, do you have a final thought for us?
Get involved. I hear a lot of people kind of complain about, the fact that there's not a lot of new blood in here, or that there's not a lot of opportunities, or that there's not a lot of education. Well, you know what? I put my money where my mouth was, and Chris Shearer was a big one on that. When the program came out, he's like, "Hey, Tarr, you've been complaining about this for a long time. Now's your chance to step up and do something about it." So I did. And so I encourage everyone to get out and do that.
And Chris Shearer, do you have a final thought for us before we have to close the meeting out?
Guilty as charged on Chris Tarr's accusation. Once again, SBE.org/mentor, a lot of great information about the program there. And Kathy Oros is the SBE staff person who can answer a lot of the questions that someone might have. And please get involved.
And the good news about Kathy is that her last name's a little tough to spell, but you can spell SBE.org/mentor, SBE.org/mentor. Remember that. And go there. You'll get it. You can get an application, and it's just your information, where you are, how to reach it, and that you're willing to be a mentor. And then I don't know the process for mentees. Chris Tarr, can you tell us if somebody's watching this who says, "Hey, I'd like to be a mentee. I'd like to have somebody kind of walk me through this broadcast engineering thing." What would a potential mentee do? Same website?
Go to the website, and there's information there. We get you signed up, and we usually do pairings once a year. So, you can sign up at any time. And, what we'll do is we'll have a welcome call later this year to welcome in the new ones and kind of explain what we hope to accomplish with the program, and kind of lay out kind of some best practices on how to keep in touch and make the program work and that sort of thing. So, and again, if maybe, you're not ready to be a full, have a person under your wing, but you maybe have some skills that you'd like to share, contact us as well. And we'd like to get you into the directory of the Rolodex of people smarter than us as a resource.
Good deal. Dave Hartman, Chris Tarr, and Chris Shearer, thank you all so much for being with us. And Chris Shearer, do you have any last comment before we sign the meeting out?
Well, this is the third of our pilot test programs of the SBE WEBxtra. It was part of or a result of this. This is the result of a point that was made during the last SBE strategic planning meeting last summer. And the 3 that we did in January, February, and March were something of a pilot program. It seems they've been very successful. I've been monitoring the comments as we go through today's and the previous webcasts. Kirk is going to provide a report to the board in April at the NAB show when the board meets. Kind of have a gut feeling that this is something that will continue, if you agree with that assessment, Kirk. So hopefully we will. So keep an eye out somewhere mid-month in April. And following months, we hope to bring you another installment of the SBE WEBxtra.
I think one thing we can do to improve the program is to have a short exchange at the end of it where we play we play an SBE trivia game, engineering trivia, right? We give out fabulous prizes for those who.
I thought you were going to say we're going to play the girl from Ipanema or something there,
which I'd also be down for. Really, I mean, that'd be great.
Well, there's a reference right there. Oh my goodness. Hey, I want to thank you watching for joining in and tuning in to the SBE WEBxtra. This has been our 3rd episode, and coming up in April, we'll decide where we're going to go from here. If we're going to continue as we are, make some modifications, and sure, we'd like to hear your feedback as well. And for feedback, Chris Shearer, where could a person write? Of course, you can comment on the YouTube program. You can comment there. We'll go through those and read those. Chris, is there any other way that people could comment on or give ideas for the SBE WEBxtra?
Yeah, in fact, I just made a note in the comments in the chat window on the live stream, comms@sbe.org, comms@sbe.org, and that'll come directly to me. And if it's not a question really for me, I'll be sure to forward it on to the appropriate person, and we'll get the answers you need.
Awesome. Awesome. Good deal. All right. Well, we should have another SBE WEBxtra next month. You can go back and watch this one again. You can share the URL on YouTube with your friends or with your chapter, with your SBE chapter. That would be a good thing to do. And let us know how you feel about it. comms@sbe.org if you want to write us an email and tell us how you think we could do better or if we're doing a good job. All right, Dave, Chris, and Chris, thank you all so much for being here. I'm Kirk Harnack with episode number 3 of the SBE WEBxtra. Take care and goodbye.